Good afternoon. We're here with Dr. Jack Caravanos, a clinical professor at College of Global Public Health, and we're going to chat with him for about 30 to 60 minutes. Please send in any questions you have, put it on the comments section. He can answer anything about the college, his work, because he has a lot of interesting and really cool stories.
Yes. Well, welcome everybody. Again, my name is Jack Caravanos. I'm a clinical professor here at NYU's College of Global Public Health. And I teach environmental health courses. And I also do a fair amount of global environmental health research, usually in low and middle income countries. And most of that work is sort of recent, about the last 10 years when I started working with Pure Earth. Pure Earth, you could look them up, pureearth.org, is an NGO that identifies waste sites and then proceeds to find money to clean them up. So when you identify a waste site, it gets a little complicated and they need some scientific support, and that's where I come in.
So my first question, I want to learn about you and your background, your story, where you grew up.
Yeah. Well, I'm a child of the 60s, and I remember the contamination in the 60s and 70s, and the Detroit River catching fire, and some really horrible environmental situations. And I was in college, and I had to take a science course, just like many people, and I stumbled into a course called Chemistry of Environmental Pollution. And it was great, because I love chemistry, and it can get a little boring or a little distant, but when you relate it to water pollution, and when you relate it to toxins and the death of birds and ecological impacts, it sort of gets fun. So that one course, and to be honest, it was at a community college, at Queensborough Community College. I'm born and raised in New York. Really set the stage for saying, I love this stuff, I need to learn more about it.
Okay, and so you grew up in New York, you said?
Yeah, so I'm an immigrant family of Greek descent, born in Washington Heights. Then many Greeks migrated to Astoria, which is still a pretty Greek community, and pretty much spent my whole life here. Yeah.
Okay. But you traveled a lot, too.
Well, that's what's interesting. I think for the first 30 years of my life, I didn't do much traveling. And then in the latter part of my my career, I started traveling. My first trip was to India, and I absolutely loved India. It's a crazy, immense country. And they have a lot of environmental issues. And since then, I've been to just about every continent, mostly low and middle income countries, including Indonesia and Vietnam and of course, India and Zambia and Senegal and Ghana and all those. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's fun.
I'm kind of jealous.
Well, it took me a couple of years to get there, so you still have years to go.
I hope so.
Yes.
Okay. And in graduate school, or because this that course you took, you said was in college.
Yeah.
And afterwards, how did you kind of immerse yourself in the field, in academia or your work experience?
Yes. So I proceeded to get my bachelor's in environmental health. It was rather new back then, and they needed a lab tech to literally clean bottles and test tubes, and I applied for the job. And I ended up being the environmental lab tech for the program. So when I graduated college, I ended up staying there as the lab tech. And I really got into measurements of using the instruments to measure contamination. And it's really cool to have a little gizmo, a little electronic device that measures air pollution or water pollution or noise levels. And that sort of launched me in saying, oh, I got to learn more.
Because all the work you were doing, you were measuring here in New York, correct?
Right. Right, because my original interest is really sort of more urban health and worker health. So there are a lot of chemical hazards that both in the workplace and the environment live. So something like asbestos is a workplace hazard, but if you buy a house with asbestos insulation, it becomes an environmental hazard. So workplace and environmental sort of come together very often in our field.
Yeah, like public health, that's just everything's so overlapping and interdisciplinary.
Absolutely, yeah. Whether it's the biostatistics and what you're measuring and epidemiology, they're all it's all individual sciences coming together. And it was And it was a lot of fun. And what's interesting is I went to Polytechnic University of New York. And it was right when NYU sort of gave up its engineering school, and Polytechnic in Brooklyn bought it. This is in the 70s, middle 70s. Yes. So, and most of my professors were NYU professors that had just come to Polytechnic. So here it is, you know, decades later, and I'm at NYU, and sure enough, now Polytechnic has been purchased and taken over by NYU and is thriving.
Yeah.
So I still know some of the professors that were there when I was there. So it's sort of a full circle to come back to NYU.
Seriously, and also I know even CGPH as a school, they're starting to have like professors associated with that school.
Yeah, because so many of the solutions in environmental health are engineering, whether it's noise controls or toxins or gases. So even climate change. So a lot of people say, well, engineering, we could engineer a solution. We don't have to change behavior. So that's why engineering and public health very often come together.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have to say I'm very lucky both to experience the urban environmental world in New York and then sort of take my skills and start improving people's lives in low and middle income countries. Yeah.
And how did you make that jump from like here more local to an international?
Yeah, we get sabbaticals, and usually during a sabbatical you sort of explore new ideas, and a group at Pure Earth, back then they were called Blacksmith Institute, they needed some help, and I was on sabbatical. So I said, yeah, I could volunteer and help you out with this. So one thing led to another, and they liked my work, and they said, well, can you go there and do some training in India for these people? So I went there, and then I realized the immense eye-opening experience of just seeing the extent of contamination. So whether it's soil or air or water, and I think our students, being sort of a global population here at NYU, they know what Bangladesh is like and what Ghana is like and what Peru and some of the environmental conditions there. So they're so much worse than what we have here in the U.S. So that really said, okay, second part of my career, I'm going to focus on global health. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome and amazing.
Yeah.
And I see that you have a lot of things for us to look at, so maybe we can jump into that.
Well, I'm not usually a hoarder, but I collect environmental artifacts, and the question is, when I retire, what am I going to do with all this stuff? But a lot of my colleagues would look at this table, and they would declare it a hazardous waste site. But I just want you to know that the mercury and the asbestos and the lead is all contained, and there's no exposure.
All right.
So it's
so
perfect.
We're good.
We're good. And that's some of the skills we try to teach people is just because you have a rock here that may have some chromium in it, it doesn't mean the chromium is going to cause cancer. It takes a lot for this material sort of get powdered and get to a form where it can really produce disease.
Right. I mean, because in what form do a lot of these or some of these objects or elements, how do they produce the negative effects?
Yeah, so one of our biggest hazards these days worldwide is asbestos. Asbestos is a natural rock, and here it is. This is raw asbestos from Canada. It's as hard.
Can we see it? Maybe we need to move this up a little tiny bit.
All right.
All right. So this is what it looks like.
There you go. And you could see these glistening fibers, these striations here. That's the asbestos vein. I don't know if you can see that.
Let me see.
Yeah.
Maybe if the lighting this way.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, I see now.
You could see that. So that is a vein of asbestos, about an inch, quarter inch thick. It varies. And it's not dangerous this way. But when you take this and you chop it up and produce powder out of it, like what you have here, This is, again, these are the fibers. I don't know if you can see it there. When you rupture that and crush it, you produce a very flaky airborne material that floats like it's weightless. And that powder is what causes disease.
Once it's inhaled.
Once it's inhaled. Now, they use that powder, fibrous material, because it doesn't burn, and it's a good insulator. So what we have here is air cell insulation, very common in New York City housing, old housing. If you have an old home in Bayside, in Flatbush, in Pelham, it's quite possible that your insulation materials were insulated with asbestos-containing material.
Oh.
Yeah. And this stuff, when it's powdered and airborne and what they call friable, can produce exposure, and with enough exposure, disease. So that's asbestos. So this is perfectly safe, but when you have it in a form where it's a powder, like even here's powdered asbestos. If I were to open this jar, or God forbid, if this broke and spilled on the floor, we would have an emergency situation here. But this is a powdered asbestos that they use for filters and for all sorts of different things. Yeah. So, and what we do here is teach students how to understand the exposure assessment that's going on. Meaning, just because you have the material doesn't mean you have disease. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, and that's some of the work that you do with Pure Earth.
Yes.
Right? Because I was reading about how you try to go to these low and middle income countries and provide solutions for them, or less toxic solutions for them.
Yeah, it's because some of these we have to use. India still uses tremendous amounts of asbestos for, sort of for this material. This is asbestos panels, and they call it transite asbestos cement, and a lot of roofing material and pipes are made with this type of material. And whether it's China, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, they are still using tremendous amounts of this type of asbestos. So it'd be nice to say let's ban it, but the reality is in many countries this is sort of the only option. So the next question is, can we use it safer?
Exactly. And what are some of the things that we can do in our everyday lives to make better choices around these kinds of materials or elements?
Well, the good thing in the U.S. is our regulations are both our EPA and our workplace regulations are rather advanced, and much of this material has been either banned or has been ordered to be inspected. So today, even buying a house, if you see insulation like this, chances are the homeowner is going to not voluntarily, but agree to get rid of it before the transaction.
Oh, okay.
So today, if you were to buy a home, you'd want to ask the home inspector, saying, well, what about an oil tank? What about mold? Does this house have lead paint in it? Is there any asbestos insulation? What are the tiles made of? Oh. So home inspectors today are pretty sharp, and they can sell you a variety of services. And the good thing is the people today know to ask about lead paint. And to if they see staining on sheetrock, they'll ask about mold.
Okay. Yeah, this home buyers out there.
Yes.
And also you have a shout out from Maureen. She says she loves your collection of asbestos rocks and other materials, and that she's reminded of your class. And she's curious as to when more environmental classes will be offered by CGPH.
Yes, and that's a great question, and the answer is soon. We have several courses coming online. One is climate change and public health. We're rather excited about that. There's another course in emergency preparedness, because where some of our activities are in spills. So you can imagine if there's a building collapsing in New York. What is the silica exposure? What is the asbestos exposure? Is there any gasoline vapors? So a lot of environmental issues get tied into emergency preparedness. So that's a good, if you want to learn more about assessment. And then I teach a course. It hasn't been offered yet, but it's on its way, on environmental assessments and interventions.
Oh,
so you
awesome.
have a lead problem. What's the best way to deal with it? So that's sort of a hands-on course with a lot of examples.
Oh, that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I'm jealous. I wasn't here for that.
Well, you know me. I like instruments, and I'm a hands-on professor. I don't like to stay in my office. I usually go out there and like to do the measurements and teach people how to do the measurements and sort of plant seeds. Yeah.
Oh. And I know you mentioned there was a demonstration you could do, talking about hands-on.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of what we call citizen science that you could do out there.
Oh.
And I think most of you know what this is. This is a battery, and it contains about 12 pounds of lead. And lead today sells for about $1. They're about $1.50, $1.20 a pound. So when you do the math, there's money in this battery. So in countries, they actually break the batteries and sell the molten metal to buy rice and food for the family. So this is not good. It's scavenging. It's artisanal, because when they break this, they don't realize how dangerous the lead is.
Right.
And lead is still pretty important stuff. I have all sorts of things. I want you to be aware when you're shopping. If you pick up a little trinket, here's a little trinket we see. I don't know if you could.
Yeah, we can zoom it.
There you go. And it's a little owl, and it's a good luck charm of sort, but it's really heavy. You say, why is this thing so heavy? And the answer is they add lead to it. Because, you don't like to buy something very light. Lightness sort of implies it's cheap.
Exactly.
So very often they'll add lead to it. So whether it's these trinkets you see in gift shops, if you pick it up and it really feels heavy, chances are it has lead in it. I'd say almost definitely. And I love my little fertility symbols here.
Yeah.
This is a man and a woman. And, of course, these come as a pair and symbolize fertility for families.
Side.
Oh, you want to? Okay, well, this is it's supposed to be a G-rated show, but we can. So there's obviously a male and a female. But if you hold these, they're really heavy.
Yeah, they are.
And they symbolize that. So lead is used for so many things, but one was a colorant. So what we have here is a McDonald's 1978 glass. And it was recalled because of lead. And what I want to show you is how we can quickly test. Now, and you could do this because these lead sticks are colorimetric sticks that determine the presence of lead, of surface lead. And this one is called Lead Check. And if you look inside, it's basically an ampule of a liquid, an ampule of a powder. And when we break this, there's a reaction and they mix, and it's like a pregnancy test. If it's blue, it's this. If it's red, or a diabetes test. So what we'll do here is we'll break one, break the other. We'll shake it up, and we'll rub it on. Now I would say the white probably wasn't lead, but in this particular case, I would say we should rub it on the yellow. And they say there, if it's red, it's lead. And let's see. There you go.
Oh.
Yeah, it's most definitely lead.
Yeah.
So that means that a child just really rubbing their finger on this or putting this to their mouth would actually get some lead coming into their body, into their GI, and into the blood. So that's why these were immediately recalled when they discovered it was leachable lead in the glass.
Oh.
And we still make this mistake. We still have toys coming in from overseas that have leachable lead.
And how is that mistake made? I mean, I just figure like these companies, like McDonald's, has a lot of money. Is it just an oversight, or?
Well, my experience, and we had something like Fisher Price, right, a name brand toy store, a toy brand, high quality. Well, they order tons of toys of different colors from manufacturers worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And their specifications say thou shalt not contain lead above a certain number.
Mm-hmm.
So they are ordering the right material, but are they checking it when it comes into the stores? And that's what happens. So the material, the toys, the rubber balls, the dolls, the plastic, the glasses, right, are just not verified that they're lead-free. So it's not, what my experience has been is basically a failure of the manufacturer was outsourced. And, but then McDonald's is the one responsible for checking to make sure it's what I bought. And they never did that. So, and interestingly enough, they got caught a couple of years ago because there was actually cadmium. So there was no lead, but now they discovered there's some cadmium in the paint.
And what's cadmium?
Cadmium is a metal, and as an element ingested, it produces a variety of problems, including kidney damage and some renal damage. It's a heavy metal toxicant, cadmium. You know it as cadmium batteries. NiCad batteries, they have cadmium. But cadmium's a pretty serious toxin also. So we every now and then we get these, But your makeup, your rouge, your hair coloring, those are usually today in the U.S. pretty toxin-free.
Okay.
When you travel, it's a different story.
Wow.
Yes.
So maybe if we travel, we have to come prepared with our own.
I would say be careful buying lipstick in some of these countries because they've been known to use lead chromates as colorants in lipsticks and
wow.
makeup. Yeah, so it's not food. You're not supposed to eat it, but they very often will put it into lipstick, not realizing people do ingest some of that.
Yeah, I mean sometimes when you're eating, it just gets in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So mistakes like that do happen. Yeah.
And then Angela Bernhardt.
Oh yes.
You know her?
I do. I've heard that name.
She said that students can check out your info sessions videos on Pure Earth and GAHP. And Pedro Cienfuentes Yepes
Yes.
is saying hi to you.
Oh.
And that it's great to see you.
Yes. Pedro and I have done some wonderful work in the Amazonian part of Peru called Madre de Dios. And what they do there is they are extracting gold from the alluvial sands in the Amazon, in the river bottoms and excavations. And in this sort of sandy, gritty material, there's a little bit of gold. And mercury sucks out the gold. So think of mercury as a magnet and picking up gold. So Pedro and I have traveled up and down Madre de Dios taking air samples of people that do this work, and the exposures are serious, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's called artisanal gold mining. And Angela's right. I do believe in social media. It's a great way to get the word out. It's fast and fun and informal. And we, over the years, I've done my best to try to get some of this as YouTubes or Facebook postings and Twitter feeds, etc.
Yeah, that's definitely awesome. Can I know actually more about these international experiences? What has been some of your most memorable experiences abroad doing the work you do?
Yeah, so I would say I'm so lucky to be doing this work, to have found Pure Earth in Blacksmith, and luckily we were able to do a lot of identification of these sites. So one of my earliest and most favorite, though the health impact wasn't huge, but was Haina. Haina is a port in Dominican Republic.
Oh.
It's like Newark of Dominican Republic, in that all the ships go there.
Got
And
it.
there was a small smelter that was taking batteries like this, breaking them apart, melting them, and selling the lead.
What's a smelter?
Oh,
Yeah.
so a smelter is a place where once you get this material out, right, you break the battery, sometimes with a hammer, it's pretty crude, and these terminals here are pure lead, so you can just melt those. But then there's also chemicals in here, and you take the chemicals out, you put them into a bowl, you add some carbon, and you sort of produce liquid metal. So what we have is lead oxide being converted to metallic lead, and that's called a smelting. But they do that for silver, for gold, for iron.
So it's
for
the
zinc.
melting process.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a crude way, smelting is sort of melting.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were in the DR, Dominican Republic.
So there were piles of these batteries, 20 feet high, and the government had cleaned it out, but they didn't clean the soil. So years later, kids are playing now in the empty field and getting poisoned. And we identified the site. We got some, what we always need is the champion, whether it's the Erin Brockovich or these people who are local champions. So it's usually a local person who is motivated and wants to get action. And we found one, and she was wonderful and helped us mobilize the community. The government wanted to do the right thing, so they didn't really fight us. They didn't have money to clean it.
Mm-hmm.
You should know low and middle income countries cannot do this cleanup. They don't have the money, and there's other priorities. So that's why we go for international monies to help us do this, and donations. It's a big, between international foundations and then donations, that's how we can clean up this site. So for like a ridiculously low $100,000, we were able to clean up this site and impact hundreds of kids. And as years went out, the bloodleads went right down. So it was so nice to see a problem, design a solution, get it done, find the money. Everybody was contributing, and really just see the bloodleads sort of not quite disappear, but definitely way down. Yeah, that was good. And then you may know personally that I do love motorcycles, but so my best one was with Pedro and my colleagues in Madre de Dios in Peru, where traveling to a site, we ended up having to motorbike there, and this was heaven. To be on a dirt bike racing through the Amazonian jungle.
What?
Yeah, I know it sounds...
Out of the movies.
Yes, and it was like, you see these pictures of motorbikes half in water and mud, and I'm riding this with instruments heading to a site to do my measurements, and I'm thinking, can it get any better? Because I'm doing what I love to do most, environmental assessment in developing world, and I'm going there on my favorite hobby, motorbiking, and they're actually... they're paying my expenses. So, I mean, this is called success. I think I was so fortunate. And now it is sad when we do find contamination. So while we're having fun and building some nice stories, it is sad because some of these communities way in the jungles are using mercury and getting exposed. Yeah.
And do you know, Angela wants to know about Zambia. Kabwe?
Yes, Kabwe.
Yes.
Yeah, Kabwe is a really sad story. And what's sad is that it's decades old. So this is a mining village where they take lead-containing rock, they crush it, and they process it, just like they process iron or zinc or gold. Eventually, the town of Kabwe, the mine sort of went dry. They didn't really need it. It wasn't economical to keep it going. So they pretty much stopped the mining. Everybody's still living there. Now it's flat. It's very dry. There's very few paved roads. So everything's a dirt road. And all the lead is still there. So that trucks would come by, stir up the dirt, get a cloud of lead-containing dust, and it would just settle. So what's happened is the whole city has lead contamination in the top few inches of soil. And the numbers are horribly high. And years ago, thanks to Pure Earth and trying to get some funding from international donors, we were able to do some pretty good blood testing with the health department down there. And we found some really, really high levels. So I am convinced there's serious morbidity as well as mortality probably going on in Zambia. So luckily we got the attention of The Guardian and the Pulitzer Center, so I just came back from a great trip where I was with a reporter from The Guardian and a world-class photographer, Larry Price, and thanks to Pure Earth, we went down there, and the three of us did some amazing photography and interviews, and it's a great story in The Guardian.
So go check out that article.
Yes.
We'll put it in the comments at the end.
Yeah, it's pretty. I have to say, Caravanos is a pretty rare name. So if you just type in Caravanos and Zambia, you'll probably get there. So.
And what do you plan, or what are the plans for Zambia moving forward?
Well, the importance of doing stories like this is getting the attention of everybody, of the governments, of the international agencies, of people like ADB, World Bank, WHO, UNIDO, all these international groups, as well as people and donors, right? So you have families that want to help and getting money. But the key is to figure out a remediation that's sustainable.
Right.
So we don't want to go in there with a Band-Aid and quickly just patch it up. Like some people say, oh, why don't you just give chelating agents to people to suck the lead out of their blood? Well, that's not a permanent solution, right? So why don't you just train them to wash their hands before they eat? And that's not a bad idea, but it's not the final solution. So what we're doing is we're experimenting with different remediation strategies. Meaning, should we remove the soil? Should we scrape off the top layer? Should we cover it? What should we cover it with? What type of plants grow best? So we're doing pilot projects.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And once these pilot projects show promise, then you could say, hey, big bank, hey, UN or WHO, give us money to do this on a big scale. So. But there's a lot of work to be done in Kabwe. Kabwe can keep us. And where public health students come in is, where is the contamination? Do the people know about it? Just communication. Mm-hmm. What are the short-term, activities, changes in diet, behavior, washing, and then, of course, measuring success, which is what public health does, interventions.
Okay. Yeah. And throughout this whole process, what is the role of the local, whether that's the residents or the government? What are they doing during this time?
Well, they, of course, they're always embarrassed, right? So whenever you bring attention to a matter like this, they immediately get a little defensive, and we know we're trying, we're doing our best. And what I love about Pure Earth, its philosophy is really not antagonistic, right? We're not trying to, send anybody to jail. We just want to fix the problem and improve health. So that's a great philosophical approach. It's not the only approach. There's legal action too, but we don't do that. And essentially, the governments want to do the right thing. The ministers, usually we work with the ministers of health. But even the environmental ministries usually know that this is bad and we want to do it. But the challenge very often is you have HIV, you have malaria, you have leishmaniasis, you have all these diseases in the background, and you have lead poisoning. So given that lead poisoning doesn't hurt, it's hard sometimes for them to believe that it really is a problem. So, but I would have to say, whether it's Dominican Republic or Peru or Vietnam, some countries are fast, but Vietnam's amazing. They really are gung-ho in cleaning up some of their activities. So we identify a site, they really want to get there and do something quickly.
Why do you think that is the case for that country?
Oh, that's a good question. It must be a sociological, anthropological, behavioral. Yeah, I don't know why some countries. Vietnam is amazing how they've grown in the last 20 years or so. So they're very progressive that way. Some countries are hard, right? China, they really don't want our help. They want to sort of do it themselves. So every time we try to do something in China, whether it's e-waste or lead, they say, no, we're on it. So other countries need help, and most of Africa needs help. Whether it's Senegal or Ethiopia or Ghana, they're eager or Nigeria. They want help. Yeah.
And in your experience, what has been some of the most efficient ways to promote that local engagement or that buy-in from the locals?
Yeah. And it's important that they see they have control and ownership of the product and the final thing, so that it's not just another rich company coming in, cleaning up a dirty area and saying, okay, goodbye. We want to transfer the knowledge, we want to transfer the technology. We don't want the money. The money goes to the country. It's spent well, and some countries are really proud. In Indonesia, we did this cleanup in Indonesia at a toxic site, and it was the first toxic cleanup in Indonesia, which is a huge country of like 300 million people. So they were like so proud that they did it. Sometimes doing the first one gets infectious. So that's a good feeling.
And Angela wants to know, what was the hardest part in Zambia?
Yeah, I would have to say, and not to sound cliche, but the children, just seeing the children and what they're wearing and what they're eating and the clothes, and they're running around. It's a tropical area, half naked with no shoes on, running around lead fields that have thousands, sometimes tens of thousands parts per million of lead, hundreds of times higher than the allowable level. And they're eating something and they're putting their fingers in their mouth, and just seeing them, because there's no forks and knives, they're eating with their fingers very often. I could just almost see the poison going into their body. And they just don't, forgive me, they sort of don't seem normal kids. Inquisitive, playful. I try to engage them. They're very quiet, they're distant. Now, I don't know how much of that is cultural or how much of it is lead poisoning, but it just didn't seem right. So that's the hardest, when seeing the kids, because that's the next generation.
And as far as logistical or practical challenges when traveling to all these different countries all over the world, in your experience, what are some of the lessons learned?
Yeah, well, I'm rather happy that we can identify these sites. We could do the risk assessment. We could sell a good story. We could describe it, come up with some good ideas. But funding is always tough, and it's a shame that we clean up one site. Just imagine cleaning one block in New York City, in Manhattan, but the other 20 blocks around it are still contaminated. So it's always frustrating that we can't do a whole city or a whole area, because it just usually finances.
Yeah.
But I have to say we're the staff at Pure Earth is very active to try to find foundations. There are people, donors, Bill and Melinda Gates and Bloomberg and Zuckerberg. All these people want to do the right thing, and very often they're giving some money over. But I would have to say the big ones, HIV, malaria, sometimes do suck away some of those resources. So not to say HIV is not important, but it's sort of under control, and there are other things that are really still need a lot of work.
Yeah, and for environmental health or like environmental sciences, I feel like the negative effects show more gradually. It's not like malaria where you see them right away.
That's right.
So maybe those are not prioritized as much.
No, it's you're exactly right. I wish lead would cause warts on your skin, because then you could say, look what's happening, Arsenic does that. Arsenic causes a skin disease. So sometimes you can say, see all those blisters, that's arsenic poisoning. But we always have to convince people. And the analogy is cigarette smoking, right? Cigarette smoking doesn't hurt. People like it. But it's damaging years from now. And there's still a lot of people out there that still smoke. because they don't really appreciate the damage just yet. So, but we're getting the word out. And I think lead, there's no doubt it's the largest global environmental health threat to both children and adults. And WHO and this group, Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, have sort of quantified it. So it's on the radar. So hopefully, we'll be able to clean more and more of these sites.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of opportunities in environmental health for anybody thinking about public health in general.
Yeah, because, for example, in Zambia, in Kabwe, I need a biostatistician to analyze the health data. And I need an epidemiologist to do a study to say, is this group getting sick differently than another group? And how do we measure whether our remediations are successful? And then I need a community international health person, a behavioral specialist in health, to design educational curriculum that says, hey, this is how we could fix it in the classrooms, right? So the kids know about lead before they're even out there. And I need environmentalists to do the measurements. So there's room for everybody. It's a big problem with a lot of pieces that need to work together to fix.
I see. So there's lots of opportunities.
Yes, including media people, because if you don't get the word out like this,
right.
and whether it's any of the social media outlets, you're going to go nowhere. You can't just publish in a esoteric journal and say, "Oh, I did my share." You have to get the word out, and that's why these things are great. Thank you.
And my next question is regarding actually NYU or CGPH, why you chose to come here and teach and work and research here with us.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I have a long career in academia, and it was primarily urban health, New York City urban health. And NYU's global network campuses, 14 campuses worldwide, just give me the platform and the opportunity to take some of what I do with Pure Earth and make it global. So I can go to Abu Dhabi, I can go to Ghana, I could go to Indonesia, I could go to any of these places and both teach the local students and offer them a master's degree in public health, and also do the work I love to do with Pure Earth, which is teach them the skills so they could do their own cleanups and run their own programs. So it was a perfect match of global, environmental, and all the campuses. Yeah, I'm excited. It's a lot of potential here.
Yeah,
a lot of good people.
Our department for environmental health is very, very new. So I feel like there's a lot of potential and flexibility. And you're part of that.
Yeah, it's very fertile. The ground is very fertile, and the ratio of students to faculty is very low. So we have, one-on-one attention. I have a lot of projects. Some of these are parts of a capstone experience or a thesis. So I think anybody that works with me will be working, in countries outside, in one way or another. So that's good, yeah.
And what kind of student or what kind of person do you think thrives in a program like CGPH's or in New York in general?
Well, I think we're so lucky in New York because whenever I teach, whether it's face-to-face or even online, I say a story and there's someone in the audience that knows exactly what I'm talking about, whether it's a waste site or whether it's a drainage ditch or whether it's a dung cake that people are burning for fuel. So I just love the fact that our students are the world. They are global students. And of course they're very qualified and they're really personally motivated to do some good work, right? Public health is not investment banking, so we may not get very rich in this, but the reality is it's so satisfying. And I would have to say the new group of students coming in with their social media skills and their desire to just sort of break out of the box. And, publishing is good and abstracts are great and conferences, but then there's a whole other way to get that word out. And I think that's where we could learn a lot from our students. Yeah.
seeing as you have lived here your entire life, essentially, what are some of your favorite things, events here in New York? Whether they're public health related or not.
Yeah. Well, I love architecture, so I would say just walking down Broadway when people come into the New York, friends, say, "What should I do?" I say, "Well, go to Broadway and 59th Street and walk all the way down Broadway and just look up and left and right and the architecture and the buildings, going through all the neighborhoods." So for me, relaxing is walking the streets of the city, and I have an architecture friend who teaches me a lot. And even looking outside my window now, there's this
you have a great view, actually.
There's this wacky building of different penthouses sticking every which way. So it is kind of cool. So I enjoy that. And then for relaxing, most people don't know, I'm a woodworker. So I really, I enjoy making little wood boxes and trinkets. And I think when I retire and have nothing to do, I'd like to get back to doing my woodworking. Yeah, I didn't want to go to college. My father forced me to college, and I went kicking and screaming because he was a furrier. He worked with furs in his hands, and in the garment district. And of course, I had no choice. I went to college, right? And I got into it. I discovered chemistry and environmental, and one thing led to another. So.
And now you're in academia.
I'm in academia, but I still love woodworking, so I still like to use my hands.
Yeah. Okay, so is that your hobby on the side?
Yeah. I would say motorcycling is always fun. Keeps you young and alert and fit. But
Agile.
I would say, yes. Yeah. Oh no, trust me. Zigzagging my way through Manhattan takes skill. Any bicyclist knows that. And but I think if I had a hobby, it would be woodworking is what I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's some of your favorite food? Actually, this is a two-part question. In New York, and then favorite food from all the different places that you've traveled to internationally.
Yes. Well, I still revert to my typical cuisine of Greek food. I love all the Greek dishes, and they're pretty healthy stuff. I would have to say I really enjoy Vietnamese food. Some of it can get a little spicy. I don't know why they eat soup in the summertime. I haven't figured that out. But the pho, yes, that's what people say. It sort of purges their body, But those soups are just absolutely great. So when I'm there, that's all I eat. But I live near Midtown Manhattan, near the Indian, what they call Curry Hill.
Oh.
So I'll eat anything. So it's good.
We have a question from Valeria Kovac. Have you ever calculated how many assessments you did? Which one was the most memorable?
Oh, I have not calculated. That's a good question, and I need to probably make a list of them because I've been with Pure Earth for over 10 years, and we do a lot of sites. I've been to 35 different countries.
What?
Yeah, so it's good. There are so many good. Some are sad. Some are good because they're sad stories. Some are good because we fixed it and we got things moving and there's traction. And some are good because I was on a motorcycle, so it's a combination. But there's an intriguing one with a lot of promise in Israel and the West Bank. And there's some e-waste transferring, electronic waste going from Israel to Palestine. And the way it's being processed could be cleaner. But it's such a great opportunity for like a synergistic relationship, right? Because those two countries are always struggling for everything. But this is one where one group really needs the jobs, the other group really needs the service done, and it looks like they're finding some road to improvement. So, because e-waste is it's a big issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I want to say e-waste, like if we had a room of dirt this big in my office, and we tried to suck out the gold from it, we would get a tiny amount of gold. So if this whole room was gold ore, and we processed it, you probably would get probably not even that amount, a tiny amount of,
and for so much
gold.
work, right?
Exactly. If this room was full of iPods and iPads and smartphones and tablets and computers, pulverized and filled to the top with e-waste, like gritty material, you would probably get, 10 times the amount of gold, and you would get silver, and you'd get nickel, and you'd get zinc. So what I'm getting to is, yeah, e-waste is not good, but it's better than tearing a mountain apart, hunting down zinc, because there's plenty of zinc in e-waste. So another way to look at it is e-waste is a new, commodity. We should be mining e-waste instead of mining the mountains of, Bolivia.
I see.
And people are realizing that. The Chinese are definitely realizing that it's actually, you'll make more money. So,
Yeah.
so it's but it takes a lot to sort of get there because we have to, process all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if for somebody who is interested in this field, environmental health, the kind of work that you're doing, where would you direct them? What kind of documentaries or articles, books?
Yeah, there's I get a lot of my news daily. There's an environmental health network newsletter. So every morning, in the morning, I get a scan of all the environmental news globally. And I pick and choose what sort of interests me, so that's how I stay on top of things. I know it sounds corny, but YouTube is so rich in everything, whether it's how do you cut an onion or how do you measure lead in ceramics. So I tell people, don't underestimate the power, the educational power of YouTube. So I enjoy that, and sometimes I just watch some crazy. Like you could do one, recycling e-waste for gold capture. And there's a whole set of videos on how people are doing that. There are people that are taking old computers, smashing them about, and getting the gold out. And they're doing it in their backyard. I know, it's not a totally safe way they're doing it. Anyway, so there's a lot of great learning there. But I think if a student's interested in this field, or any part of it, they should just come in and see us. Make an appointment. We're very approachable. We want to, make sure you're making the right decision and not, we don't want to, waste your time. So don't be afraid of these professors. Come in saying, look, I'm shopping for a program. What do you got to give? Or why should I come here? And what can you tell me about it? So that's my my advice to students.
And even when they're already in, I feel like I've heard people having had opportunities through you, just coming into your office hours and talking about what they're interested in. Like my friend who went to Columbia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you connected her with X, Y, and Z, and now she's there doing research on mercury.
Yes. Yeah. No, because look, I love students. I want for me, happiness is seeing a student get a job after getting their master's and having a good life, wanting to do what they've been wanting all this time. So that's for me. How do I measure success? It's how many students are working in the field, not how many publications I have or anything like that. That's because ultimately I'm a teacher. That's what I love to do, and that's why if I can bring some students with me on these projects, I absolutely do. Yeah. I brought dozens of. I think I brought not dozens, probably 10 to 12 students over the years on these projects, and they're eye-opening experiences.
Yeah.
Maybe you should come with me.
I mean, if I have an invitation, sure. And so where are some of the opportunities you see in public health moving forward, whether that's in environmental health or not? But
well, look, the climate change is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So it's so hard in the environmental field to do anything outside of climate change because it's so overwhelming, whether it's in the media and it is, of course, happening, and we're trying to adjust to it. So, but with climate change comes emergency preparedness and what's called extreme weather events and disasters. So I would say this is all fun stuff, assessing toxins, and there's a lot of it going on. But I also would say a student coming into this school needs to learn about about emergency preparedness and climate change in the sense of extreme weather and fires and forest fires or hurricanes and typhoons. Because, we're going to have another terrorist event somewhere. And we're going to have another building collapse. We're going to have another flooding, another Hurricane Superstorm Sandy. These are imminent. Whether it's New York or Houston, who knows? But they're going to happen. And our students have to be able to answer the question, is the house contaminated with mold? Is the house, is there chemical contamination in the neighborhood? So that's why we try to get those skills into them also. Because it's a growth field, I think. Everybody's looking at that. Yeah.
And now I want a tour of your office.
Oh, well, I'm still unpacking. We still have construction going on, but sure.
Yeah, we can start wherever you like. We could finish there too if you have anything else.
Yeah. Well, I usually have this on a shelf. It's not all finished up. You see a variety of things here. You asked me what's new and hot. Well, this is something I think, sadly, many of us can relate to. My father passed away, and he left us with, 2 pounds of, more than 2 pounds of pills. Mm-hmm. Now, what do you do with these pills? Some are toxic, prescription pills. Others are Advil. Do you flush them down the toilet? Do you put them in the sink? And now, finally, many pharmacies are required to take them back. But are people really doing that? I mean, that's
true.
Thing. So that's. And I was in Chernobyl many years ago on a tour, and I don't know how legal it was, but the guy gave me a baby slipper from the.
Yeah.
I know, it's right. But it's still hot. It still has a little radiation to it because there's powder on this, and in the powder are radionuclides. So this was 1986, and now here we are,
30 years later.
30 years, right?
Yeah.
30 years later, right?
Yep.
Chernobyl. And we have still radioactive material. It's not dangerous, but it definitely gives a spark, so we teach students about that. But this is sort of interesting. I did a lot of work in lead paint in New York City, helping people identify sources of lead. And this is a window from an old rehab, and I said I'm a woodworker, so I sort of took out the window panes and I put mirrors there. But it's actually lead paint, but I covered it with a blue paint. So
that's not.
Yes, but if you would take a sample of that, it's lead paint. And I have one of my favorite pictures of some recyclers in Gujarat, India. They're a whole family of recyclers, and you could see what they're wearing, no shoes at all. And they're taking chemical drums and heating them up, collecting the last little bit of chemical, pouring it out, and recycling it. And then my usual toy, of course, some artifacts from my travels. I have many motorcycle helmets. I always keep one handy.
How many helmets do you got?
I have 4 helmets. Should I ask you how many shoes you have?
I have a...
Okay. So say it. But no, they're all different. I don't need 4 helmets. You sort of collect them. And I'm sort of designing my office. I'm still working on a couple of things here. And I have
lots of books?
Lots of books, yeah. And these books are more artifacts. I tell you today, do we really... When I need information, will I really go here for it? And the answer is probably not, unless it's something very specific. So they're mostly memorable antiques. I look at this book and see, I remember that course, I remember that person that gave me that book. But if you look at it, there's toxicology, there's air pollution, food sanitation, worker health, asbestos, chemical hazards. So it's sort of just looking at those titles, I could tell the students, say, look at these books. That's what environmental health is. It's everything, not just asbestos or lead. We do a lot of work in different areas.
Yeah. And you have the motorcycle?
Oh, my little collection. People give me little toys. of stuff. Yes.
And I know you had a box of artisanal like pottery. Was that one
Yeah.
of those?
I have. Well, as I said, these lead checks are very. You get these at many home repair shops, and for a couple of dollars, you could actually answer the question: is the lead in this pot? Does it have leachable lead? So is the glaze in this pot containing lead containing?
Okay, so it's the glaze that the part that makes it shiny. That's what has lead.
Exactly. So, and what's interesting here is that the outside is not glazed. So they put this on the fire. So when I see that the inside is glazed and the outside is not, it tells me that this is for cooking.
Ah.
Because something like a mug gets glaze on the outside for decorative purposes. Yeah, you would never waste glaze on the outside if you didn't have to.
I feel like a lot of places abroad, for the tourists, you know how they buy things to take back home, a lot of it is glazed. Would you recommend to not buy that stuff?
Yeah, well, if it's decorative, you know, if you want this bowl and you want to put some flowers in it or something, yes. But if you're going to put salsa in it, if you're going to put food in it, I'd say no. Now, the sad thing is, I bought this in East Harlem, and I did not buy it that long ago. Less than 2 years, I've had this. And I asked the person, plomo, Spanish word for lead, and she said, no plomo, no plomo. And of course, I knew it had lead. And when I tested it immediately. So the point here is that because this was fired in Mexico under a wood fire, the glaze didn't really lock in. It didn't really seal tightly. So if I just rub my fingers and now tested it for lead, yeah, you can't really see it. But if okay, so here I am rubbing my fingers, and I could actually, let's see, let's do an ad hoc experiment here. So I'm just rubbing my fingers there, right? And if I test them, let's see if I get any lead. Yeah, look at that. So you saw that just by rubbing the pot, I was able to get enough lead coming off to get a positive lead check on my fingers. So if I put my fingers in my mouth now, I would get lead poisoned. How high would it be? Well, it depends how much I suck on them. But the reality is, it's in kids. That's why something like this, you do not want any child near this, whether it's candy or cookies or any liquid foods.
That's definitely information that's good to know.
Yeah. That's what we do.
Yeah. And then over here you have your whole schedule.
Yeah, I'm a visual person. I need to see things to sort of better understand them. So when I work, I usually like a board to sort of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some people like tables, some people like words. I'm a visual guy.
Gotcha. And I have some last, more of fun questions. Like, what's your favorite movie?
Oh.
Or it could be more than one.
Yeah. Well, The Sixth Sense. I love M. Night Shyamalan. The Sixth Sense, I saw it again the other day. It was just, it gives me the shivers every time I see that movie. But I have to say, the most entertaining is probably Pulp Fiction.
Classic.
Yeah, it is a classic, yeah. And then another one is, if you've not seen Crash, it's a movie Crash. And it's an all-star cast. It's a really painful story about interracial relationships in Los Angeles. Yeah, it's a good movie, Crash.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, Games of Thrones.
As far as series?
Eagerly waiting July Game of Thrones, yes.
Okay. Have you read the books?
No.
Me neither.
Oh, I don't read anymore. No, it's crazy with so much visual material out there and so much to do and so many things to see. It's hard to really. I think maybe that's what I'll do when I retire is start reading books again.
For fun.
Yeah, for fun.
As far as favorite artist or favorite musical genre?
Oh, it's amazing. I still, my music is still evolving. I really like everything. I alternate rock. You know, I try to stay current. Too many of my friends are stuck in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they don't know any of the new music. So, but I am a Deadhead. I do like the Grateful Dead.
Ah.
So, and I have to say, you know, I'd love to meet Jerry Garcia. Of course, he passed away, but if you listen to his lyrics, they're very philosophical, and it would be a great thing to meet him. Yeah.
Huh. And if you could meet anybody, deceased or alive, who would it be?
Yeah, now that's, I thought about that, and there's a couple of questions, but I would like to meet Michael Buckley. Michael Buckley is the lead plaintiff for a court case involving asbestos. And the Metro North, it's Buckley versus Metro North. I know this is crazy, that, you know, but I've been trying to find him, but I can't do it because he's harmed. He was harmed in a lawsuit, and there was a Supreme Court decision based on Buckley versus Metro North. It's an asbestos exposure case, but he lost the case, and I would love to talk to him about how he feels about what Metro North did to him, and you know, the future. So it's very, yeah, you definitely didn't hear this guy, but I talk about him, I teach about him in the course. I use the case of asbestos exposure by Metro North in my class, and he actually lives in Brooklyn, but because of HIPAA requirements, I can't. The physician's not allowed to give me his address. So,
yeah, but with social media and all these things.
Yeah, well, I know, but Buckley's a, yeah.
You need to wrap up your stalking skills.
Well, I think I just need to get a millennial out there and say, "Hey, find him for me."
There you go.
Yeah, so you do it, right? Right, but you're right. Michael is a common name. Buckley, you know, there can't be too many of them out there. But
now, if you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh, I would love to be able to fly. I think out of all the cool things, just being able to soar like a bird must be just amazing. You know, to go anywhere and up and down, left and right. So I could, well, I mean, Superman would be great, but because he could do a lot of different stuff. But if versus being invisible or being super strong, but I think flying, that would be nice. Yeah.
Do you have any like heroes or mentors?
Oh, you know, the two, and the answer is yeah. And no, I think I'm supposed to say my father, right? But he did a lot for me. But there's two professors, and I think the one that did it for me the most was Frank Rudo. And I have to say I'm so sorry that I never reached out to him and gave him a big hug, because he was my professor in environmental chemistry, and he was an old timer. But he was so into what he was teaching. He was so excited about this and passionate, it was infectious. And obviously, it infected me. And to this day, I have regrets that I never sort of went to him and said, hey, you changed my whole world. You single-handedly pointed me in a direction, and now I'm a clinical professor at NYU because of you. So I probably need to reach out to his wife. He passed away, but I need to reach out to his family and somehow put that in writing.
I mean, there might be a student who you're that for.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I hope so. Yeah, that would be good. And I'd like to know. Yeah, I definitely know a lot of students that are grateful that they took classes with me and learned the skills. So. But yeah, if I could do for them what he did for me, that'd be a great thing.
Yeah. And as you work and research, do all the work that you do, what is it that keeps you motivated, keeps you moving forward?
Well, it's a big field, and not to use a pun, I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. So I think what I like is that it's always changing and growing and morphing into something else. So can I just study one thing only for the next 20 years or one community? or one heart disease or something. A lot of researchers are very good and disciplined that way. But I love the ever-changing nature of environmental health. You know, all of a sudden you could have a hurricane, and mold is like the hottest thing, you know, on the health agenda. And then next thing you know, lead is very important today. And so I think that the fact that it's always changing. And then I have to say, I love the cycle of academics. You know, that I have a group of students, they learn, they grow, and then they leave, and then they get a new bunch. So it sort of keeps you on your toes. It keeps you young.
Yeah. And if you could have or give any last minute advice or words to prospective students or people who are already in the field, what would it be?
Another very influential professor, Raul Cardenas, and he was professor at NYU or Polytechnic in engineering. He's also a strong mentor. He said once, someone asked me to teach a college class, and I wasn't ready. I was nervous. I was scared. I didn't. And I said, "What do you think, Prof? Should I do it?" And he says, "Yes." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yes." And I said, and I'm confused, you know. You know, and he knew that I wasn't a world-class professor, and I was just a newbie. But he said, "You know, they're not going to ask twice. If you say no, they'll never come back to you next." So my lesson there is, take the chance and say yes. You may not feel right. You may say, "Oh, this is not the right time," because they're not going to ask again. So if someone says, "Would you like to be part of this research project? Would you, you know, can you join me for this tour tomorrow?" I said, "No, not this time. There may not be a next time." So that's my little words of philosophical wisdom. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think that's great. Thank you so much for talking to us. It was very informative, very cool to see all the demonstrations. We don't have any questions from the audience, but please share this video, make Jack famous.
Okay, yes, I will send this all out, especially my mother.
Aw. All right.
All right, well, thank you very much, everybody, and stay in touch.